Hi, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to talk about comparing tonight. When I first looked at the module, I thought it was interesting that they said everybody compares. It doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter who you are, but everybody does compare, and that's kind of how we base our reality on that which we know. Everything is a comparison. So to start out, I'd like to have everybody think of one comparison that they've made in maybe the last week. Any comparison. For instance, the other day, I think it was Tuesday, my girlfriend cooked dinner, and then the next day I cooked dinner, and the comparison was quite evident that her meal was quite better than mine. I'm not much of a cook, but that was a comparison that came to mind that I thought was pretty fun. So, anybody think of a comparison, Emily?
I like to buy turkey pepperoni for my kids to eat, and at Walmart it's $2 cheaper than anywhere else.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I don't buy it at the other place. I always buy it at Walmart. There's my comparison.
Anybody else? Thought of a comparison.
I was thinking about how the white flour in America is allowed to be bleached, and we're allowed to use a lot of artificial ingredients that are actually outlawed in Europe and other countries.
There you go. That's definitely a comparison. It's a deeper one. That's one that we're trying to reach eventually in this lesson. Okay, so we've got a couple comparisons out there. Thank you, volunteers. A couple things that I wanted to recall about what we already know about comparisons. Again, everybody compares. Doesn't matter how old you are. But the first thing that we really want to know as teachers when we're doing a comparison activity, does anybody can think of what do you have to have before you compare? Aaron?
Criteria.
You have to have criteria on which to compare.
Yeah,
even more fundamental.
You have to have at least two different things.
And can you just like have the names of the things, or do you have to have? You got to know about these things, right? So that's the first thing that you really have to have in terms of comparison in the classroom, is that you got to have two topics that your students are well informed on, right? If you're going to compare, I have an example here of the Romans and the Mongols. If they haven't studied it, there's no comparison to be had. What are you going to do with that, right? And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about was that when you do a comparison activity, the idea is to start out very casual with some kind of broad, very open comparisons, and then eventually work your way into some deep intricacies. And the idea, obviously, is that you can see the juxtaposition, that we end up at a deeper understanding once we see the comparisons. Okay. And I also love the word facilitator when we talk about comparisons, because I think that comparisons oftentimes are, very learner-based. We're not doing too much except instigating questions, asking the right questions. So I wanted to do a comparison activity, one of my favorite. I'm not going to get too math dorky on us today, but I love Venn diagrams, and it's going to be a challenge for me to not talk about it in a mathematical context. But we'll do a Venn diagram. And I wanted to discuss a topic that we've been playing with pretty much all semester, and probably since we've been at SNC, is the concept of how we're going to have our students turn in their work. Is it going to be on paper? Right? Are they physically going to hand in their work, or is it going to be a digital idea? Okay. So I wanted to do that comparison in terms of a Venn diagram. So one there. You could help me out and just hand these down the line. Okay. So, again, the first idea is that we need our learners to be informed. I believe all our teachers here are quite well informed. We've turned in assignments digitally. We've turned in assignments on paper. So, we're going to do a comparison between which one works for us. So, let's start out with kind of a brainstorm. So here is, when I say paper, I'm talking about both handwritten and physically typed. Are we physically presenting it to the teacher, or are we giving it to them in a digital sense? So, in our brainstorm, again, this is going to be characteristics that are unique to turning in assignments physically or on paper. And then characteristics that are unique to turning things in digitally. And then, you know, obviously the intersection here being characteristics that are similar to both categories. So let's start out with some broad ideas. What do we turn in on paper?
Written assignments, problems.
Okay. Written assignments. Keep throwing them out as I try to not butcher the spelling of words. Anything, even digital. What do you turn in digitally?
Written assignments.
Also written assignments, sure. So maybe this could even go in here, in our intersection, written assignments. I'll just put it in there. What about subjects, certain subjects that would fall into either category? What subject might fall into, here's my paper?
Can you give me an
English.
example of what you mean? Are you talking about?
Yeah, maybe I'm not being very clear. For instance, you know, in our class right now, how many digital pieces of communication do we have? We've got the blog, we've got the wiki, and then we also have the forum, right? And we have assignments that we're turning in there. And then we're also dealing with the, you know, the folders. So I know that, for instance, in my specific discipline, I'm playing with that balance too, and I have to have my students turn in written work. I have to see the work, right? If they're just plugging in answers, that doesn't help me much, whether they're getting right or wrong.
I would say like equations.
Sure, equations, things that involve equations.
But things that involve video.
Video,
For instance, doing a video interview of someone.
yeah, you can't exactly turn that in on paper.
No.
What else?
Well, essays.
Essays here or
Written
there?
assignments. Be both, I guess.
Yeah.
Research can be both.
Yeah.
Research.
What about like online conversations,
Yeah.
a chat or whatever?
Okay. Would you say that a specific discipline would, like math, would fall into turning in by hand or turning in digitally?
You need, like you said, you need to see their work.
You need to see their work, so maybe more
Carbon
here.
paper, yeah.
Amy turns in all of her work digitally for her math class.
Right, and there are benefits to that, and there's also, you know, the efficiency of the grading and all that stuff. What about, let's turn back over here more to a digital atmosphere. What classes are all digital?
Well, I was thinking for my subject, music, there's a lot of things that you can turn in online for music.
Okay,
Like
Sure.
if you're creating a piece, like a MIDI file, it's a lot easier to just email it to a
Right.
teacher rather than burning it.
definitely. Okay, all right,
The portfolio is digital now.
portfolio. So for the sake of time, let's get down to, you know, we have a good list of, you know, a little sparse, but we can definitely deal with it. What's the point? What are we going to get out of these guys? And what are we going to get out of assignments that are turned in by hand? And what are we going to get out of assignments that are turned in a more digital fashion?
Well, immediate, I guess,
Yeah.
handing in or feedback or
Yeah, definitely. That
you cut
immediate.
down on, yeah,
Time.
wait time, I guess. potentially.
Yeah, and also, you know, conservation of everything, right?
Mhm.
Paper and all that stuff. I
Conservation.
know grading, like, all right, you turned in your assignment, I didn't even look at it. You got, what did you get on it, right?
Right.
Okay. What about paper? Would you say authenticity falls into here or here more, or would you say it's both? Both.
Paper, I think.
Yeah, I would agree a lot of the times, you know, if you receive a letter, no one writes letters anymore, but if you received a letter from someone, handwritten, they would say, wow, this person wrote a letter. You can see their writing.
You know, from teaching online, one of the classes in the
Sure.
program, there's more depth when papers are turned in on paper rather
Depth.
than over there.
Sure. And I'm going to interject a personal anecdote here. I'm teaching a calculus course online, and I taught it pretty much all online last year. And it's an AP course, so they have to take the test at the end of the year. And I didn't see the results I wanted. The students that I were teaching were, very smart, very, very smart, and we went through all these different topics, but most of the assignments were online. What might be the downfall of that?
It could be cheating.
Cheating, okay. So maybe more easier to cheat here. What else? What if you're not physically writing? Are you going to be prepped to go into the AP test?
No, because you're not used to writing.
Okay, so maybe better test taking over here.
Practice, yeah.
Okay. Let's get 2 more ideas that are a little bit deeper.
I was also thinking that on the paper, a benefit of having like a hard copy is things get lost in the digital world.
Sure.
I feel like a lot easier than when you get lost on a desk.
Okay.
So
Yeah, and I think we could argue both ways there, but I like where you think your head's at there. So maybe record keeping.
Yeah.
All right, let's get one more idea here, and then I'm going to move this to a different realm.
Is there more, you can meet more learning styles if you're doing in person?
Here?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
Also, digital is dependent on electricity, so if there's no power.
And not just electricity, internet. They have to have internet.
True.
Availability.
Very true. Yeah, we're very privileged in the country that we live in to have those things. Okay, so let's move this to a different realm. Imagine yourself as a teacher, because we all are teachers. Where are you going to go? How are your assignments? Would you say that you're going to be more predominantly hand-in assignments, or are you going to utilize a digital fashion more? So maybe take a stance and justify it, and it doesn't have to be here or there. Obviously, there is this intersection, but maybe a little bit of a justification. So let's think, maybe for a minute, make a decision on, all right, I'm a teacher, maybe a year down the road, the digital media is all there, digital is very big, but in the same regard, this is also something that I value. What are we going to do? So let's go with a minute, and then I want to hear some responses.
Okay, you want us to discuss it with?
Just take a minute to think about it, and then we'll just discuss as a forum. Okay, quick minute. Does anybody have anything to volunteer? What's up?
I'm probably going to be in the middle because
Sure.
writing music is easier digitally, but there's something about writing it on the staff paper that it gets ingrained in you more, and so I'm definitely going to do both.
Perfect. Great.
Well, after seeing this up here, there's one thing that we didn't put up there, and that is, if I have my insights and strategies, I can share with the next door neighbor, and they can read the formatting. So it's a role model piece that the digital just has not done. And now I've used the digital, and I like the digital, and I can respond this person, that person, but for people to respond to each other and learn from each other by their examples, I think it works better on paper.
Sure.
And people have had the psych class. You can correct, but in that psych class, I think that's a strength of that, being able to compare and contrast those first 3 weeks.
I think I'd have them do both.
Both?
I know when I wrote this, it looked perfect on the screen, and it didn't print out perfectly.
Nice.
It was easier to correct. My formatting was way off because it's European. I didn't know that when I was doing it. But I think to prepare students for the 21st century, I would have them put URL links and all of that into their particular writing pieces so that they could be web ready. But I think I'd also have them print it out and do all of their corrections in hand, because corrections in hand just seem to be, it seems like you also have that more in-depth reading of the material. Somehow I've reread things 10 times and I don't correct the mistakes until I print it out and look at it. But I keep the digital piece because it's going to be really important for them to be job ready and say, well, I've published this in print, I've got an online piece here too, I have it on a website, and there's a link to the blog that I'm a part of. And you've covered all the bases.
Yeah, that's a nice personal anecdote. That's definitely something I think we've all encountered before. Oh, it looks perfect. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So much fun to deal All right, one more, and then we're going to move to a close. One more feeling.
I think it depends on your topic too, your
Sure.
subject matter. I mean,
Sure.
because for English in particular, I mean, I see portfolio, like the things that stand out to me digitally are portfolio and just basic communication, which we didn't put in there, but between students and parents and whatnot, like that's really a big deal. But videos, I could see those being useful, but most of the things that are on paper are the things that I need to be able to see. Someone who can transfer their thoughts from their brain onto a piece of paper. I have to be able to see that. Because if they can't do that, then how can they do it digitally? They have to be able to do it on paper first.
Sure.
So I see paper being much more valuable for me.
Sure. All right. So in close, I think I wanted to just introduce kind of the biggest asset to this whole idea is the tension that comparison yields. You can see that, in an assignment like this, we start out with things that are a little bit more broad, not that deep, right? Maybe physical characteristics of certain things or that. But once we start to get into this idea, further and further down, what you develop is attention, right? And students, do students start to think on tension, or do they run? Most students start to think, right, with this tension. So when you see these kind of binary, right, things that are opposing each other, students start to think, and they start to think, more and more about it. It's not that one-sided argument that everybody sees. It's the binary that really stimulates the thought. And the idea is that everybody can generate their own unique thoughts from an assignment like this. So I love Venn diagrams, and comparison in general is just human nature. And if we can utilize it in the classroom, I think we're pretty much inspiring our students to think themselves.